If you're like me, you are enjoying this part of the year where it is pumpkin flavors for everything. It adds such a wonderful richness. I'm gonna share a whole dinner with pumpkin. I'm gonna share a dip and of course, plenty of desserts that are perfectly pumpkined. All right, let's get into it with that first recipe. I'm making a super easy dip. I'm gonna start in my food processor here with a block of feta cheese, 8 ounces. I'm gonna add a half a cup of Greek yogurt, and then I'm gonna add a whole can of 100% pumpkin. To that, I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of honey, and I'm gonna blend everything together until nice and smooth. Then I'm gonna add in some fresh thyme right on top and blend it again. Once I have a smooth consistency, I'm gonna add this to a bowl. I'm gonna smooth it out, and I'm gonna put a little kind of like a well, perfect for a drizzle of honey. I'm gonna add more of that fresh thyme, and then to top it off, I'm gonna add some roasted pecans. Now, usually I don't enjoy nuts as much, but with this, it is the perfect little crunch, the perfect balanced bite. I love how everything paired so well together, and this is so easy, so quick, and if you have a party to go to last minute, this is a definite thing to bring. It is so delicious. Next, I'm using pumpkin in our delicious dinner, and I'm starting with a skillet over high heat with a little olive oil. I'm gonna add a chopped onion. I'm also gonna add a chopped pepper, red and green. You can use any peppers of choice. I'm just gonna saute that in the oil until everything is nice and soft. And then I'm going to add in ground turkey. You could also use ground beef if you'd like, but I've only done this with ground turkey. I think it pairs really well with the pumpkin. So I'm gonna saute that in there until it's all cooked through, and then I'm gonna add some fresh garlic as well as some seasonings. I have some chili powder, about a tablespoon, also a tablespoon of smoked paprika, and a special seasoning to add is a teaspoon of cinnamon. This is going to enhance the pumpkin, and it's going to bring out some wonderful flavor. I'm also adding a teaspoon of cumin as well as a little bit of salt. I'm going to mix all that until my seasonings are all thoroughly mixed in, and it smells amazing. Now I'm ready to add my 1 can of 100% pumpkin, and I'm also going to add 1 can of diced tomatoes with chili, so Rotel. I'm gonna add that in, and I'm gonna combine everything, mixing it really well, and I'm also gonna add 1.5 cups of chicken broth. Now this can continue simmering on your stove, but my pot here will go onto the base of my crock pot, and that will let it just slow cook, and the longer it does, the better and more enriched flavor it produces. It just gets better and better over time. Now that this has been on the slow cooker for hours, it's ready to enjoy. We're going to put it in our bowls with a dollop of Greek yogurt, or you could use sour cream, and we absolutely love this. The flavor of the pumpkin is the perfect balance to everything. It is rich and wonderful. We will be eating this all season long. This next pumpkin recipe is also something I'm going to be making on repeat. My new favorite chocolate chip pumpkin cookies. We're going to start with 1 cup of white sugar. I'm going to add to that 1 cup of pure pumpkin. I'm also going to add half a cup of oil, 1 egg, and a teaspoon of pure vanilla. I'm gonna mix that until well blended, and now I'm ready to work on my dry ingredients. To a bowl, I'll add 2 cups of flour and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of salt. I have 1 teaspoon of baking soda, mixing it with 1 teaspoon of milk. To our pumpkin mixture, I'm gonna add all our dry ingredients, as well as our dissolved baking soda in the milk. I'll blend all this together starting on the low speed, and then I'll move up into the medium speed and just get that all worked together. When everything is nice and mixed, I'm gonna add 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Mix that up until they're all incorporated, and now we're ready to add these to our baking sheet. I'm going to take my medium-sized scoop and just take a dollop and put it on my parchment sheet lined baking sheet. And these will go into a 350-degree oven only for about 8 to 10 minutes. And the reason I love these so much is they have the perfect cake consistency. I absolutely love soft cookies, and these are the perfect texture. The semi-sweet chips offer the perfect sweetness with the pumpkin. It is so good. I absolutely love these, and I'll be making them every season, if not every month, because they're that good. And my family loves them as much as I do. Now, this next dessert is a recipe that shows off my love for a trifle dish. I've done 2 whole videos of all the dishes I've made in my trifle dish, from salads to desserts. So when I found these mini ones at Hobby Lobby, I knew I had to get them. They're the perfect size for individual desserts, and especially when you have just a few guests coming over. And this dessert is a pumpkin cream cheese layered parfait. I'm gonna make the crumbs for our parfaits. Ginger snap cookies or Biscoff cookies, or even graham crackers will work just fine for your base. So I'm just gonna add my cookies into my little mini processor here. We've got crumbs. In addition to my ginger snaps, I also ground up some speculoos cookies. Those are the types of cookies you get on flights on the airplane. They're the airplane cookies. They're gonna add the sweetness that'll balance to that bite and that spiciness of the ginger. Now I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Stir that until all my crumbs are coated. I'm gonna go ahead and put my crumbs at the base. Layer 1 all done. All right, we're gonna make the pumpkin pie mixture for our parfaits. Starts with a block, 8 ounces of cream cheese. We're gonna add 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. We're gonna mix that with our electric mixer. All right, now that that's mixed, let's add our other ingredients. 3/4 a cup of pumpkin puree, a teaspoon of pure vanilla, and then also about 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. We'll blend that all again with our stand mixer, and then we're going to add our homemade whipped cream. This is another batch I whipped up. Same thing, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, a tablespoon of powdered sugar, and then a teaspoon of vanilla. And I'm just gonna fold that into my pumpkin pie mixture, and we're gonna get that all incorporated, and then we're ready to add this to our trifle dishes. Now they're ready to top with our whipped cream. I have my dispenser, and I'm just going to put swirls all around on top as the final layer. And then I'm gonna put them in the fridge for just a couple hours so everything can get a little more firm. And then right before my guests arrive, I'll drizzle on some homemade caramel and the cookie crumbles. And I topped them with these little star cookies. I wish I could find leaves or pumpkins, but I just had these stars. I think they're cute. And this dessert was so good. The balance of the layers is so good together. The pumpkin and cream cheese and caramel to top it off. Delicious. Now let's say you want to make this dessert for a big crowd and you want to do more than just the 4 individual servings. We're going to do that now with this pumpkin icebox cake. Now instead of those ginger snap cookies, here is where I'm using the graham crackers. I'm going to put a sheet down for my first layer. I'm going to break pieces apart so I have a full 9x12 dish covered. I'm gonna make my cream mixture, which is similar to the parfaits, but this time I'm using 2 blocks of cream cheese. I'm going to use a 1/2 cup of brown sugar and a 1/4 cup of white sugar. Then I'm gonna add my full can of 100% pumpkin, and I'm gonna blend all that together. But before I do, I'm gonna add my spices. This time I want it to have that pumpkin pie spiced flavoring, so I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of allspice, and I did add some more pumpkin pie spice, just about a teaspoon. Sometimes the pumpkin pie spice on its own doesn't have as strong of the flavors as the others. That's why I added all of those separately plus the pumpkin pie spice. Now I'll blend everything on medium speed, and in hindsight, I should have mixed the sugars with the cream cheese first to get it nice and smooth. You are gonna see some bits of white as I smooth this out onto my graham crackers because that cream cheese was not all incorporated. But that's okay because we're making layers and nobody's gonna see that, so it's gonna be fine. But just keep that in mind, make that a separate step in your process. All right, smooth this all out on the graham crackers first layer, then we're gonna top it with another layer of the graham crackers, and then we're going to top it again with the pumpkin mixture. One final layer of our graham crackers, and I'm gonna top everything with homemade whipped cream. Now I always like to make my own whipped cream. It is 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla. I always make it. You can also use Cool Whip if you'd like. Now it's ready for our graham cracker crumbs that I've processed in my mini food processor. I'm sprinkling them on top, and just before my guests arrive, I'm going to add some caramel, but you want to have this in the fridge for at least 8 hours. The longer the better. Over overnight is best because all those graham crackers will soften and the flavors will meld together. It would just be so good. So what I'm going to do is when they arrive, just before we're about to eat, I'll drizzle homemade caramel sauce on top. I absolutely love my caramel sauce. I'll leave the recipe in the description below. I love to make it homemade. It just tastes better and it goes so well in this dessert. It was so good. This next recipe turned out to be one of my favorite appetizers I have made this season. So we start with 1 sheet of puff pastry dough. I'm pinching the seams, and instead of using actual canned pumpkin this time, I'm using a special ingredient here, pumpkin honey butter. Now, I got this from a specialty store, but you can find pumpkin butter all over your grocery store, and now it's very popular this time of the year. So I spread about 2 tablespoons of this spread out, and then I'm going to take my Brie wheel. I'm going to cut off the rind on the top. I'm also going to score it. So I'm going to do slices across both ways, and then I'll trim the excess puff pastry and then wrap everything all around the Brie wheel. And then I'm going to take some string. I'm going to go underneath the wheel and do about 3 strings where I tie it up so that it makes indentions into the Brie and the puff pastry, making little indentions like a pumpkin. I'll trim off any excess. I'll go ahead and flip it over. I'll brush it with some egg wash, and I'm going to add it to my baking sheet, which I also have on here sliced baguette, which I drizzled with olive oil and sprinkled with salt. This will all go into the oven together, 375 degrees for 20 minutes until it's all golden brown and looks like this. I top the pumpkin Brie with a few sage leaves to look like leaves, and the cinnamon stick is in the middle, half a cinnamon stick. This was amazing. Everybody loved it. So cheesy, sweet, and perfect. This next pumpkin recipe is so easy, I forgot to record the first part. It is only 2 ingredients though. It's going to be a box mix of your yellow cake mix, any brand, and 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. You're going to mix that up in a bowl, spread it out onto your baking dish, cook that in the oven for 30 minutes at 350 degrees, and you are going to end up with this. And now while this was cooking, we're going to make our glaze sauce for on top. It is going to be 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of apple cider. And my apple cider actually is pumpkin spice apple cider. So that's going to add just a little bit more pumpkin. So I have pumpkin spice here. I'm just going to add a little bit since that's already in the apple cider. So just a dash of that. I'll blend that with my hand mixer until everything is nice and smooth. And then I'm gonna just pour this directly onto my cake, spreading it out, getting it down the sides as well. I transferred it to a serving tray and sprinkled on top some cinnamon. And then I put around the border of the cake these football cookies because I brought this as the dessert to our local pub to watch the football game with friends. They brought some chili and we brought some sides, and it was so good to go with everything. The dessert was the perfect way to end on that sweet note. It was a great evening and a great dessert. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed all things pumpkin. And if you want to see more recipes like this, get inspired in the kitchen or in planning or productivity, be sure to subscribe, click that bell, and I will have more videos coming your way. Thanks so much.